Yo, listen, man, you didn't come up with no excuses.
No.
You didn't. They didn't. You wasn't like, yo, the pads was too heavy.
Oh, Jesus.
The pads were too heavy. The helmet was too heavy. How did you expect us to win? We're the Steelers. The pads are too heavy. The helmet's too heavy. The cleats are too strong. Like, no excuses. You took your loss on the chin. You walked it off. I mean, I just figured I'd bring that up. I mean,
sounds like you're alluding to something.
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, I'm sure people have heard about it at this point. You had to hear about it. I'm quite sure there's more that's came out since this recording.
Hold on. If they're a fan of this podcast, the Highly Advised podcast, they would be a fan of it. We are the cross section of hip hop and MMA. And where would they want to follow us if they wanted more updates about? Because you had a post about this thing you're alluding to. Where would they have saw that?
Oh, the post. Yeah, if they wanted to see the post about it, they should have just checked the Instagram, which is the Highly Advised. Yeah, the Highly Advised podcast.
What?
Yeah,
that's crazy. Yeah. Who would have thought?
Who would have thunk it? In the words of Drake.
Where else would they have saw that?
If they want to see our live reaction, they should have checked us out on Twitter, which was the Advise Highly, at Advise Highly on Twitter. Or, I mean, but it's all good. Even if they didn't check either one, I could tell them this. If you want to know how our reaction to this, at least, or what we predicted, you could always go on YouTube, right? And watch us actually talk about this. And you can YouTube the Highly Advised podcast
in a video form, shortened for the listeners. Now, go ahead and inform them as to what we got to talk about.
Tailor-made just for them. Tailor-made just for them. But I mean, similar in terms of tailor-made. Similar to like that crazy outfit that the boy wore. Yo, did you know Loaded Lux actually was the one that opened walked Deontay Wilder out for this fight with him and Tyson Fury?
So, well, I mean,
in
the trilogy fight for Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder, no, I did not see that part. I'm not going to lie, listeners, I didn't see it. I watched it the next morning.
But he watched it. I'll give you your credit. You watched it. I will say this, though. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I wish you had watched it in real time, bro. This was an amazing fight. And I'll say that from just in the sense of, in the turn, I wish Lau was here for this episode, man. I really do, because knowing him as a boxing fan as well, this fight was great. Like, in terms of, by the time we got to before we got halfway through the fight, we had already had 3 knockdowns. 3 knockdowns. Deontay Wilder even came out in the fight looking great. He looked great. He was working his jab. He was actually trying to box, and not just necessarily rely on the right hand. Granted, he knows that's his money shot. So of course he's gonna worst come to worst, and as we saw later on, he would go for broke. If he's gonna go for broke, he's gonna Mega Man the arm. He's gonna Mega Man the right arm and try to see what he can do. So, but nothing worked. Nothing worked. Nothing. I told you guys, I told y'all last week, I told y'all last year, I said this 2 or 3 years ago. Like I always said, Tyson Fury, aka the Gypsy King himself, that's what he anoints himself as, the Gypsy King. I said he was the best heavyweight that we have right now between the top 3, top 5 champions, not champion, like champions. Top out of those, he sits at the throne. And he proved it when he fought Deontay Wilder over the weekend, bro. He proved it. Deontay Wilder came at him, like I said before, he came at him, was trying to box him, ended up getting knocked down. He won the first 2 rounds.
You've been calling for a while.
Because Tyson, no one could beat, I'm not going to say no one could beat Tyson Fury, but there's nobody that's going to beat Tyson Fury out of the talent, the current talent pool. And granted, there was a heavyweight fight over the weekend with some dudes that I think they were both
some guys.
Yeah, actually, it was the fight. It was actually on this prelim. It was actually on the prelim. I forget the fighters.
Go ahead.
I forgot the fighters because I had just gotten back home. I had just landed. So, I landed the same day this fight was happening. So, I didn't have a chance to catch them. But apparently, they were both 2 good fighters. So,
Well, when I was watching the fight, it's kind of crazy because I think that Deontay Wilder did better than I expected him to at the least. I think
Right.
he tried to jab the body, in the first few rounds, but then he got tired, and then I wouldn't even say that. I think one, he got tired, and I think two, he just kind of abandoned that and was like, "Hey, look, after the knockdown, I'm gonna knock him out." You know what I mean? And it's like, hey, like you can see just towards the end of towards the end of the round, he just didn't have it in him. I think after the eighth, I was like, okay, like this is like not gonna get any better for Deontay Wilder. That
It
being
took the
said,
eighth round.
I think it was the eighth round where I was like, this is getting bad. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah. No, I can understand that because I think by then, yeah, because by then the refs, not the refs, but the doctors already came into the ring to see if they could, if it would be necessary to actually stop the fight
Right.
because dude was getting busted up.
Yeah, he was getting hit a lot. Like after I want to say the last round I had for him was the round he knocked him down in, which was the fourth, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Before that, I had the fight. It was kind of close. You know what I mean? I think he was a little bit more active than Fury in the first round, but I mean he was still like getting hit. And I think Fury was dominant in the next two rounds. Then Fury got knocked down in the fourth, and I think pretty much after that, I had the rest of the fight going for Tyson Fury. And, I think that he did show improvement in this fight. And like I was saying to you over the weekend, that I think that Deontay Wilder could have done better to have. It's kind of like a double-edged sword with him taking this fight so close to the last fight. I don't feel like he had the time to improve enough to win in this fight. I feel like, some of the same stuff he suffered from in the first fight, he suffered from in this fight. I think he was just able to counter it a little bit better because he handled a little bit better with his pace in the earlier parts of the fight. And he wasn't, I don't think necessarily, I think he was putting in the work to set up some of his punches later on in the fight, unlike how he did in the first fight, because he was just kind of trying to hang in there with him and like outbox him. You can't outbox Tyson Fury with the skill set that he has.
Right. I mean, and I agree to that. Like, I definitely agree with where you can't in the second fight, you can't try to play someone else's game. In this fight, I do agree where he did show more improvement coming into this fight. But my thing was, yes, I believe he did get tired early on, just because it was a different style of fighting, which I knew would end up paying dividends for Tyson Fury in the later rounds. Because, like we all know, if you don't know if you learn something the improper way, in this case, right, or if you're learning a new technique, when you get tired, when your body gets tired, it's just going to go for what it knows. It's going to go, it goes back to what its original foundation. And that's what we would eventually see in the later parts of those rounds, where Wilder still was trying to use his jab and trying to formulate some type of game plan, but he was too tired. And a lot of that tiredness did come from where we saw in the second fight where Tyson Fury was punching him in the side of the face, back of the ear type, or not back, but in the ear type of area where it messed up his equilibrium in the last fight, right? In the second fight. But in the trilogy, it still played its part where we saw Deontay, I think after he got hit in the ear, I think in the third round, because I actually had him winning the first two rounds. So and in the third round, I was like, okay, he's up right now 2-1.
Okay.
So I think it was, but I think after that knockdown, his equilibrium was all messed up, which I think just kind of doesn't help when you have someone like Tyson Fury who came in at his heaviest, still putting that weight up on him.
Right, exactly. And he said that.
And I was gonna say, he did say, he mentioned that after the fight.
Yeah, Deontay Wilder said that after the fight. He was like, yeah, he showed up heavier. He came in there essentially to put more pressure on me, and kind of hold me throughout the fight. And that's what he did. And I wasn't good enough to beat him. That's what he said.
Well, I haven't heard anything from him since the fight. So I'm glad he's actually taking the loss like an actual champion should take a loss, because I don't think anything. I think from this fight, no one can take anything from him, of course, right? Because granted, he lost. He only won 3 rounds, but he's never been a fighter he's always been a fighter, like I've said, that relies on that right hand. Like, he's relied on the right hand so much that, like I always said, at a certain level, it's going to get exposed. whether it be AJ, whether it be Tyson Fury. It's going to get exposed. It's just all about who can take the shots from him. And Tyson Fury, and that's the thing about Tyson Fury. I think after the 4th round, Tyson Fury had a wake-up call because in the second, during the second knockdown, when you watch the fight, you can see in his face like, yo, what's happening right now? I can't believe I'm actually, you know what I'm saying? I can't believe I might end up losing this fight. So it seemed like he kind of got everything together. And granted, I think not Tyson Fury, but Wilder ended up catching Fury again, I believe, in like the 7th round.
Yeah.
But it was like it was literally like right before the bell rang. So,
and that was like the last spark he had in the fight. It really, because like I said, right in the 8th is when it started getting real bad for Deontay.
Exactly. And you could tell like the same thing that happened in the last fight, bro. Like at least at this point, he made it further than he did in the first fight. I will give him that. In the second fight, I will give him that. But like, it was just the amount of damage that he was taking. And it's a difference when a guy is like, okay, hey, I can take your punches. Now that I can take your punches, you can take some of mine, but I'm more technically skilled than you. Let's see what happens. I think from what my belief is, and like I said, I didn't watch any post conference from Wilder's side, outside of maybe 2 or 3 minutes from his coach. To me, what it looks like is because Wilder did come in there. He came into this fight at his heaviest. He didn't come into this fight as a lighter fighter. So he came in at his heaviest, and it wasn't enough. And I think he was hoping it would pay dividends by working that body in the beginning, so he can get those big looping shots in the latter parts of the round. But it didn't work. His legs were too tired. That same dent that he claimed was an egg-shaped weight in the second fight, it reappeared again. But this time, I guess you can honestly say, oh, it has to be it had to be from real punches. And I think, to me, the funniest thing I think of this whole thing is that, Wilder changed his gloves at the very last second, right?
So they had a little controversy behind the scenes about that type of thing as well.
Yeah,
it's always something.
Yeah, but it's because when you're, so how fighters they bring someone from the other side and inspect the gloves when the gloves are getting put on, so there's no cheating.
Right.
And for boxers, I know you get to select the gloves that you'll have. So typically they may have 1 or 2 pair. And I only say this based off what I saw with Floyd. But there's also, I guess, another a third pair of gloves that are primarily horsehair, which I believe it was like the MT gloves that Tyson Fury ended up using in their second fight. So Wilder decided to use those gloves at the very, very last second, like right before coming out, right before walking out, right before he was about to get I think it was probably after he got his hands wrapped. But before the gloves went on, he was like, nah, I don't trust the 2 gloves that I brought. I want these. I think that was probably a tactic in the to prevent they cheated me with the gloves type of thing. So I guess that was his whole plan, but I don't know. I think it's safe to say after this fight, after this trilogy, we will not get another fight between Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury unless Wilder and Fury find their way fighting for a championship, or but Wilder puts himself back in that position. I don't see these 2 guys ever being in the ring again with each other.
No, they're probably not going to fight each other again. And you know what? Me personally, I think that I would like to see Deontay Wilder. Like, I don't think he necessarily has to fade away. I think that if he really wants a shot at the belt again, and I know that we were having this conversation during the weekend, and I think that Deontay Wilder can still be putting some good fights. You know what I mean? They could, try to book him well, but I guess it just depends on as to what they do with him, as to who he's fighting next.
Yeah, I mean, I think in terms of like his next possible fights is because I know before when we had talked, you did say something about maybe he should have a tune-up fight, or well, you're saying you think he should have a tune-up fight before coming into this fight,
right?
Which I personally I think I thought about that. I think he should have just went straight into this fight. I don't think a tune-up match would have done anything, just because, yeah, that's a long break, but at the same time, I wouldn't tell anybody, whether because Tyson Fury has been inactive for the same amount of time. So
well, no, I was saying that he should have another fight because the problems that he had going into this fight, he had to improve on to even look better in this fight. I think another fight, I don't think it was a matter of him necessarily being off for an amount of time. I think skill wise, he wasn't where Tyson Fury was. That's why he needed time. But I guess maybe he didn't see it that way. And that's fair enough. But like, I don't think you can do that. Would you have more of a chance of getting there in an immediate rematch or over some time when you actually have time to fight more people and, you know, have more experience?
I mean, it works. It's a
double-edged sword.
It's a double-edged sword. I will say that because, yeah, had he waited more time to fight, like I said before, I think he would have been out of the picture. If he didn't try to fight for a championship right now, I think he would have been out of the picture just because, well, granted, right now we have Anthony Joshua. So because Anthony Joshua doesn't have the belt, well, let me not even say that. The fact that Anthony Joshua is going for a rematch right now for his belt or activating his rematch clause for his belt, if he were to become champion again, he would try to boot Wilder out of the picture. I wouldn't find. I mean, granted, Tyson Fury said he would always fight Wilder because it's a big payday. But other than that, I don't think anybody else would want to see that fight. I mean, he would have to start going to the next level. Maybe he could fight Usyk, and that's just because it would probably just add more to Usyk, if anything. But right now, I think the best option for him is the best thing that can happen to him right now is either Anthony Joshua, because I think Wilder needs to take a long break after this fight because he took a beating, like I said he would. And I think it may be best that he takes this break and either he fights a second tier fighter, maybe a Dylan White, or heck, if Usyk and Usyk and Joshua, if they fight, do the rematch, and let's say Joshua loses again, I think that's probably the next fight that he probably have because it would be a contender fight, and I think that would be a sellout fight because it's a fight that we all wanted, that boxing has wanted to see for a while, especially in heavyweight fighting.
I don't know. I'm curious to see what happens. Like, I think that as long as because I want to see the sport of boxing flourish a little bit, I would like it if they put him in good fights and actually, you know, tried to make it a viable fight, maybe with somebody else. But I think that with all the money that's put towards these boxers, like Deontay Wilder isn't going to be like in the co-main getting paid the way he's getting paid. You know what I mean? So that's just never going to happen. But I mean, I hope for the future of boxing. You know what I mean? I hope for the boxers.
Yeah, I mean, hey, it would be nice, but like I said, like I even said to you on the phone, man, like in his case, like at this point in his career, and he's like 37 on top, or 35, 37, one of the two. So he's at that he's at that second half, or not even second half. He's at the latter parts of most people's careers, minus Bernard Hopkins, of course.
Right.
Which he probably could actually fight for a little bit longer because he didn't start boxing till he was 19.
Well, you know what they say about heavyweights too. They say the last thing to go away is the power, and he got a lot of that.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a lot of technique either. So like
time.
Time, but Father Time is undefeated.
You're right about that.
Yeah, like don't get me wrong. I mean, unless he wants to be a butterbean at 42 years old, granted, I think he would still be in great shape, but I mean, I think it would take a few years until he gets that technical sound, which I think it will happen over time, but he's still that power he's really going to have to rely on the power. If anything.
Well, hold on real quick. One thing I will say is that luckily for Deontay Wilder, he's not known for getting in a lot of battles like these.
Oh, right. Absolutely. Well, because all the opponents that he fought, well, not all, but most of his opponents that he's fought, he typically just starches them in the first 3 minutes, in the first 3 rounds.
Exactly.
So like, yeah, he hasn't taken that much damage, but I will say this, and we all know this from MMA. Once the blueprint is out on how to beat somebody, it gets a little bit easier for the others that follow behind if they can in their case, if they can take the power, if they can take a punch, or they figure out, okay, Fury beat this guy twice. He punched this man in his left ear, both fights. And pretty much it helps secure a lot. It helps a lot. And I think we all know this reigns true because in both fights, when anybody that gets hit in the air, your equilibrium is off. Period. So I think that also reigns true when it comes to this. So like with the blueprint being out for him, he's going to have to change his style. It's just a matter of how much of a style change is going to be necessary based off his next opponent. And I think we won't really know that until he's actually fighting stiffer competition. Like, don't get me wrong, I think he can knock Dillian Whyte out. Maybe he might be able to get knocked out by Dillian Whyte because he has power. But most of his competition, if he was to fight most of his past competition, he's beating all of them in the same fashion because they can't take the punch that he can throw. Not like at the very top, there's only a handful of people. And that's where he deserves to be. He's not a B tier, he's not a B fighter. He's an A level fighter or a tier 1 fighter. He's not a tier 2 fighter. It's just he's a bottom. He may be at the bottom of the tier 1, but above, like DC. You can't beat John Jones, but everybody else in the division cannot beat you.
Yeah, it's John Jones, DC, everybody else. And that's exactly the way it was for a little bit of time.